So welcome everybody. Welcome to this week's Friday Hangout, and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Amani Hassan, and I'm the Program Director at the Arab British Centre. I'm also joined by my colleagues Becky Harrison and Reem Hamoud. For those of you who are joining us for the first time and haven't heard about the Arab British Centre, we are a cultural organization based in central London. At least in normal times, we are based in central London. We haven't been operating from our offices since March last year. But our mission is to further understanding of the Arab world in the UK. So in addition to running courses and hosting like-minded organizations, we currently have 7 resident organizations in our building. We do run a large program of activities, including our Safar Film Festival, which is the only festival in the UK dedicated to showcasing film from the Arab world. We also run a reward for culture every 2 years. And more recently, we launched a program called Connect Me, which is an online digital residency program connecting artists from the UK and the GCC. And of course, last but not least, we have our Friday Hangout series, which was originally devised as a way to encourage a sense of cultural community, literally days after the UK went into lockdown, which was in March last year. And it's hard to believe that it's almost a year ago now. This new series of the Friday Hangout is a partnership with MENA Arts UK, who are literally taking over the platform and programming a series of episodes focusing on platforming MENA Plus professionals working in the live and recorded arts. So thank you to Laura and her team for working with us over the next few weeks. We will have, this is the 2nd episode. A couple of weeks ago, we had Salih Husseini, but we will have 2 more episodes coming up. We have Amir al-Masri on the 5th of March and Khiyam Alami on the 19th of March. So make sure you sign up to these as well. If you missed it though, just so you know, all our episodes are recorded and they'll be posted on our YouTube channel. And I believe that they will be also posted on MENA Arts social media or website or YouTube channel. I'm not sure. Sorry, Laura, I'm not sure which platform it will be, but I'm going to hand over to you now, Laura. Laura is on the MENA Arts UK steering group, and she's going to be introducing this week's guest.
Hello, hi everyone. It's so great to see some, like you said, Amani, some familiar faces and also a bunch of new faces. And I've been really enjoying in the chat how there seems to be a massive crew from Northwest London who are all sort of finding out that they live really close to each other. So I hope when we get to meet in real life, maybe you guys can meet. So yeah, as Amani said, I'm on the steering group for MENA Arts UK, and we are a not-for-profit arts organisation that formed last year for creatives in the live and recorded arts who are connected to the Middle East, North Africa and surrounding regions. And we really formed to provide a support network and to advocate for representation and to commission work, and also to be part of and create conversations about all of those things. So we're really excited to be doing this Takeover series because that's exactly what we're able to do here. We're platforming some MENA Plus creative professionals in the live and recorded arts and chatting about their work and their motivations and their influences and their experiences in the industry. So each Hangout is also hosted by one of our steering group members. So today I am so pleased to say that we have the award-winning British-Armenian writer Abi Zakarian, whose work includes the plays Perfect Myth Allegory at Jermyn Street Theatre, Fabric from Soho Theatre, which is currently developing for TV, and I Am Karyan Ophidian, produced by Shakespeare's Globe Theatre. And it was with that play that she met Jessie Bedrossian, who is also a membership liaison on the MENA Arts UK steering group. And Jessie played the title role of Karyan in that production. But I will let them tell you more about that as they talk. I'm sure it will come up. So over to you two.
Thank you, Laura. Hi, everyone. Lovely to see so many faces. Yeah, as Laura said, I'm Jessie. I'm part of MENA Arts UK. So let's just get stuck in. Abi, hello.
Hello.
So Abby, I think a few people want to know about how we met. So I was actually telling Laura last week that we've never actually, because of this pandemic, met in person, which is crazy. I was supposed to do Abby's play at the Bunker last March before it sadly got shut down and cancelled because of COVID. And then somehow 6 months later, the Globe wanted to redo it again for Halloween, which was amazing. So I feel like I know Abby so well, but I haven't actually ever met her in real life, which is crazy. I'm sure we've all formed relationships like this over this time. But Abby, if you could just kind of elaborate on that and tell the audience a bit more about what I Am Karyan Ophidian was about.
Yeah, so when the Globe asked me to write a play, they wanted a series of short plays for the Sam Wanamaker Theatre for their, I think it was called Deep Night, Dark Night Festival, and they wanted a ghost story essentially. So they said just cater it for the Wanamaker, and I like to write about my Armenian heritage and big that up because not many people know about it. Excuse me. And so I decided to write a ghost, a creepy story based on the idea of an Armenian folklore, the Nahang, which is a serpent, a shape-shifting serpent that Jessie played so beautifully, not as the serpent, as Karyan. When they obviously we've had a whole year of lockdown, and when they said they wanted to do it again but as a digital theatre to stream globally last Halloween just gone, and that's when we decided to ask Jessie to do it, because I was really keen to have an Armenian actor or an actor of Armenian heritage play the role, and Michelle, Terry and Jess, the lovely Jess Lusk from the Globe, got in touch, didn't they? And I think they had a chat with you, and it was like, yeah, let's do it. And I mean, I have to say they loved her, and she is amazing in it. So yeah, that's kind of how that came about.
Well, it's easy when the writing's so good. And bringing it back to your writing, could you just kind of let us all know a bit about your journey as a writer? So how did it start? How did you get into it? Kind of like very quick summary of from there.
Yeah. So really, the really short version is that I came to writing through a completely non-traditional route. So I had a whole life before this where I worked as a picture editor for newspapers and magazines. Trained as a picture editor, did that for quite a few years, and oh my god, trying to compress this into a very short story is my now partner, we were seeing each other at the time, and he's a set designer, and when we started seeing each other I started seeing a lot more theatre, and that coincided with me working on a project that was about a Middle Eastern conflict, a book that I had to do picture editing for, with live images coming in, which is if it's a live book, as we call it, it means that the dispatches are coming in from the war correspondents, and then the pictures are coming in from the war photographers who are over there, and I'm going in early in the morning to edit them and make them, edit them so that what's palatable, what you could, how far you can push it with an image. So I was seeing a lot of really horrific stuff, and I was going home and saying to my partner, I think I'm going to go blind. I genuinely don't think I can look at this stuff anymore, but I have to do it. It has to be seen. And I don't know what I'm going to do. And he said, why don't you just write something? Why don't you just get it out? And I thought, oh, that's not a bad idea. And I wrote my first play, which is about a picture editor who goes blind because of the stuff that she's editing. And whilst I was still working full time, I didn't know what to do with it. So I just started sending it randomly to theatres, like Hampstead Theatre, would you read this? And they did. And then somebody decided to produce it. And again, I think I worked, that was on at Southwark, and it did quite well. And I got me an agent. And I carried on working full time and trying to write at the same time. But it's very difficult. So my output was not great. So I sort of had a hiatus of a few years, and then got quite a big commission from the RSC, decided after that I could probably, with a little bit of side work, make it so that I could stop working full time and start writing full time. And yeah, I sort of fell into it. I mean, I've got to tell you, when I started writing the first play, I went, I had no clue what I was doing, how a play was supposed to look on a page, literally physically on the page. So I went and bought a copy of Closer by Patrick Marber, so that I could look at it and go, right, that's, you put like the character name and then there's a little bit of writing that says what happens. So I kind of, learnt on, it's been a very steep learning curve. And then a couple of years before I wrote Fabric, I decided I really needed to just learn a few more tools about how to make this process easier. So, I did a really amazing course with Stephen Jeffries. I don't know if you know him, he's an amazing playwright. He died unfortunately a couple of years ago, and he did a regular course at RADA. And I did that, and it was like life-changing, because it was like, gave me the tool book to be able to turn my work around. So when I get commissions, I wasn't struggling. It was like I knew how to approach a subject matter and turn it into a play. And then the rest is kind of just that slow slog of getting work on, trying to make it work for you, keep going,
Yeah. No, I think it's really interesting to hear about how you started, in terms of like, you didn't even know what a script looked like, because I think a lot of people can relate to that feeling of feeling completely overwhelmed when they want to start a new hobby, or because it could start as a hobby, and being like, I don't know what I am doing. I know I've tried to write before and I'm like, I literally don't have a clue. So it's so refreshing to hear that someone like yourself did also start somewhere, because I think sometimes we're so used to seeing the end result, we don't realize everyone actually started at zero as well. But kind of linking to that, Abi, I know from reading your work, you have two very strong themes. One, I would say, is absolutely unapologetic women, and the second, I'd say, is being Armenian and influenced by your Armenian heritage. So two very big topics there that I want to give both equal weight to. So could you kind of like elaborate, maybe the unapologetic women would be a good starting place, about why you're so influenced by such strong writing about such strong female characters, and where this kind of comes from?
I think it's just being bored of seeing plays about men and just or the patriarchy or the male perspective, or just that very pale male stale kind of thing. And it was like, well, nobody's gonna that isn't going to be willingly given up, so we've got to start intervening and making work. And actually the idea of being unapologetic is, I spent quite a few years when I was learning how to write, or you think there's a way you're supposed to do it. You think, believe me, there's a million writers groups and courses and all sorts of things that are like, how to write. There's MA courses you can do. It's like, we'll learn all that and then do exactly the opposite. Do whatever you want. There is no form, there is no structure, there is no fun. Just write what you want to write. And that's, a lot of that rejection of what you're supposed to do comes from being, well, I'm, taking up space. The idea of women popping up and going, I actually want to talk about this, and I don't really care if you don't want to listen, I'm just going to do it anyway. So, and also, there's, when you do see plays about women, or when you saw plays about women, it was a very specific kind of woman as well, because, class comes into it. Class, ethnicity, so there's so many intersections that it's like, well, you're giving me a play about women's things, and it's like, but I don't recognize those women, because they're just sort of white middle class, having issues about, I don't know, stuff that's just whatever. And thankfully it's changing, but that I sort of, as I grew with my writing, it was like, actually I this is valid, this is a story I want to tell, these are stories I want to speak about. So I write about women that I know. I always say this about Fabric. I don't know if anyone's seen it or read it, but it's about a woman, and it's like, there's nothing in that play that hasn't happened to me or a family member or a friend or a colleague. It's all, and it's like, these women don't get written about very often. You don't hear those voices very often. So it's quite nice to do that unapologetically.
Yeah, and I think if you haven't read Abi's play Fabric, please go and read it because it's brilliant. It's really, really good. Thank you for that. So let's cover part 2 of that question, unapologetically Armenian. So I think for our audience members, and I know we're going to get into this a bit more during this discussion, but could you just kind of give people a brief overview? Obviously, we're both Armenian. We know where Armenia is. We know what being Armenian is. Could you just kind of give a bit of background on that and how that's kind of influenced your identity and your career?
Yeah, so it's a thing that is like so I don't know if everyone knows where Armenia is. This is the big joke. It's like it's this tiny little country
Somewhere on there.
somewhere in there, and you know you know, my mother, so for clarity, my mother is Armenian, born and raised in Iraq, and came over here as a refugee. My dad is British, Derbyshire, which is like a whole country in itself, you know. And I think it's as my work, as I've become more confident about what I want to write, I've tuned in more to my Armenian heritage. And you realise, you know, and obviously the big elephant in the room is the Armenian genocide. And there's such a whole mythos around that. And there's something that sits in you as someone of Armenian heritage, that you are constantly wanting recognition for this terrible thing. It's a core part of your identity. So it's like, well, I'm a writer, so I'm going to write about it, but I'm also going to, you know, you want to write, you want to elevate voices that you recognise, because you know out there, you know, Jessie and I found each other. You know, it's nice finding other creatives who understand the specificity. I can never say that word. Is that a word?
Yeah, it's a word.
Everyone's nodding on screen. That's really nice. Thank you. The specificity of your, oh my God, the specificity of your ethnicity. I need to write a musical. Is something that's really important. And this is, you know, this is what MENA comes from as well. The idea of it is being seen.
Yeah.
Because if you feel seen, then you have more confidence to tell your story, and you know that there are others out there who respond to it. And then there's that intersection again. It's like, you know, not everyone has to be Armenian to see Armenian plays. Yeah, it's just, you know, I don't only go and see Armenian work or British, Irish or Derbyshire work. Do you know what I mean? It's like you want to learn as well. So it's just that, you know, being proud of that as well, wanting to write about it, to tell those stories that the industry is always saying, oh, I want to hear different stories. It's like, well, here. Yeah, literally. Look at all, you know, I'm looking at all these amazing faces and names on screen, and it's like, these are stories I want to hear. Yeah, exactly. And kind of connecting to that, I think, yeah, like, as I said at the beginning, I literally DM'd Abi on Twitter because I got excited and saw her surname ends in IAN, and I was like, she must be Armenian. I need to speak to her, because I didn't know any Armenian creatives you know, a year ago. Fortunate that's grown, but it's still on single hand. There's not a lot of us, and I think I'd love to know a bit more about your experiences with that. So you've got all this fabulous, brilliant Armenian work, all these plays that you've written, influenced with Armenian characters. What's the response been from the industry? How do you tackle those obstacles? Because I know we've had conversations privately about how bloody hard it is to get this work put on, and I'm sure a lot of people listening, you know, from the MENA region can relate to that as well. Yeah. So I mean, the gorgeous thing about Karyan Ophidian was that, you know, the Globe came and asked me to write something. You get a commission, and it's like, you know, write whatever you want. So when I kind of gave them the outline, they're like, yeah, that's great. So it was this. It was that easy all the time. Yeah, I mean, you know, Michelle Terry, yes, Globe, yes. It's just, you know, there was that point of, you know, when we did it, it's like this is going to sound ridiculous, but there was a point where the credits came up, and there was my name, your name, and the wonderful musician that they commissioned. 3 Armenian names in a row, and it just was like overwhelming. Yeah. To see that and to be given that space, and it's, you know, it probably sounds ridiculous to anyone else, but you're just like, oh my God, that's huge. Yeah. So, you know, big up to them for for just doing. You know, I've always said that about the Globe. They don't just talk about it; they do it.
Yeah,
it's that easy. And so the other thing I've got on the slate at the moment is a play called Mountain Warfare, which is, I won a MGC Futures bursary on the strength of the saying I wanted to write it, but I needed to go to Yerevan in Armenia to go to Genocide Memorial, do some research. So it's essentially it's a spec, a play written on spec, but I it's been out with people, but it's that thing of, well, we didn't commission it, and you're sending out this covering letter going, it's about the Armenian genocide, it's about the cyclical nature of ethnic cleansing, it's about colonialism, it's about land rights, and you're thinking, yeah, it feels kind of relevant to every single second. And not much of a response, and you're like, it's that thing of, well, we don't really know what Armenia is or where it is or who it is, so it's exhausting, and exasperating, and
how do you stay determined? How do you stay driven to? I know, like, I connect so much to that, inherent thing of wanting to be seen and wanting to share these stories and, tell the world that we are here. We're small, but we're here. How do you keep going? Like, how do you keep that momentum?
I think for those very reasons is that it's, and also, I've got to give props to my dad for the Derbyshire stubbornness and tenacity. Is like, you just, I've got this far on a, a wing and a prayer. So I'm gonna keep going now. And the thing is, like I said earlier, it's not just like, oh, only Armenians can watch this. No, there's a point to putting it out there, because of the universality of this story. Because if you put the news on and you follow anything that's happening in China or Myanmar, then you realise the cyclical nature of these things. These are bigger stories that need to be told. So it's just you just got to keep going. It's a very difficult industry. It's a very crowded industry, and the way it's, it strikes me the way it's kind of built. It's built on an inherently kind of uneven structure anyway. That all those very British things of socioeconomic status, class, the intersections make it even harder.
Definitely.
So
you're right, we just got to all keep going. But I think you were speaking earlier about MENA Arts as an organisation, and how we've kind of come about to kind of give, hello, we're here, we want to be seen. And when I joined MENA Arts, I even had a moment where I was like, is this do I belong here? Because my country's in the Middle East, but some people say it's Eastern Europe, it's actually Asia Minor, which doesn't exist. Where am I? Who am I? What's going on? I'm sure loads of people can relate to that in some way. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on MENA Arts as an organisation. Do you feel it's where we can take up space? We've even spoken about, we're on the Arab British Centre's talk right now, doing a talk, and we're not Arabic. We're not from that area of our region. So if it's not here, where is it?
Well, it's, I guess we're that plus at the moment, aren't we, or and surrounding area. Again, as I've kind of grown into this, it's the idea of we're the Caucasus. It's a region in the world called the Caucasus. Georgia, Azerbaijan, Armenia. Anyone else? I can't remember the others. There's others, but it's that. So it's, MENA and a C. I don't know. Maybe we can add that C on. Maybe we can. We're all, especially in the way the industry and the world has been over the last year. Everyone's asking more of recognition, of being specific about things, taking up space, and I feel like we can do that now.
Yeah. And you want to just identify with who you are. You want to say, I am British, but I am also this. I am both. Why should I have to choose one?
It's
that about that as well.
It's the tick box thing. Whenever you're applying, we'll all have done this. I know we will. However many competitions and courses and whatever you apply for, it's like, what is your ethnicity?
Yeah.
There's like 1,000,001 tick boxes, and then there's always the other specifying. It's like, or just other. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you'll get a line to say, and I'm like, no, I'm going to put it. I'm going to put British-Armenian. I'm going to put that because it's important that in whatever collation of, you know, statistics, it's registered. You know, you have to start thinking a bit more like, yeah, I'm not just going to go or whatever.
Yeah,
Easiest
stay quiet. Yeah. I love it. I could just talk. Yeah, I could talk about this for a few good more hours, but I know we're on a time.
Yeah.
I'm going to move the conversation out of Armenia as much as I'd love to keep talking about it. So, pandemic this past year, as we all know, despite the pandemic, you had quite a good working year. Few projects. I'm Karyan Ophidian. What the Thames Told Me, and you did 15 Heroines with Jermyn Street Theatre, just a few to name a few.
Yeah.
What was that like? What's it been like working the pandemic, and what kind of changes have you observed?
So yeah, I was really fortunate last year to, I'm not going to say lucky because that's another thing, is that I'm not saying I'm lucky. It's like, no, we're all really good at what we do. I was fortunate to get quite a lot of work, quite a lot of commissions, and it was that watching that industry pivot from we can't do anything on stage to everything goes digital or audio. So it's been really lovely to write audio work, audio plays. You know, I did a play with Small Truth Theatre, Yasmin Arden, who's amazing, with I think Lily, who's might be here today. She was in it, and we did it as a play a couple of years ago. And last year, Yasmin said, right, we're gonna turn them into audio plays that are free for everyone. It's called Enough, and that was really lovely to revisit. But you know, having to move away from, oh, well, you've got the visual, you've got it live, so how do you turn it into you know, an absorbing audio piece? And we did this, and actually the Jermyn Street was really interesting because it was done as a on stage. You know, it was every aspect of a stage production, from design to hair and makeup, costume, tech, everything was done in Jermyn Street and filmed and then streamed. So that was another interesting way of approaching work. I think, you know, there was that rush at the start of the lockdown where it was just put everything online, and it just felt like, well, you know, I think it's just everybody was, you know, we had no idea of how long this was going to go on. We still don't know, really. Unfortunately, we're one of the industries where you need people to gather, and that's one thing we're not allowed to do now. And it's heartbreaking to not have an end in sight. It feels like it's getting closer, but I still feel, you know, uncertain about when I can go, yeah, I've got a play on. We're all going to sit in this room and
people.
I mean, you know, it just feels really alien at the moment. So it's interesting watching how the industry has adapted to it. And I think, you know, a lot of the sort of mid to smaller scale fringe venues, smaller companies have adapted really, really well, because they're used to thinking on their feet. They're used to coming at things from a slightly more not do it yourself, but do you know what I mean? It's like without a huge public amount of money behind you or whatever.
You just you get the thought.
So it's again, work in progress. It's like it's been fascinating to see what's been going on.
Sure. In the industry. And just quickly, one last question before I open it up to everyone. Kind of linking to that. So what, in your opinion, would you like to see more of in the future of theatre? And what kind, you know, we may have some aspiring writers in the audience today. Have you got any advice or tips you'd give them for the future?
I always feel a bit weird giving advice. I mean, I can only say this is what I wish I'd done or heard when I started out.
Would you have told your younger self that kind of?
Is honestly don't feel like there's a way to do things. Don't feel like if you apply for like 100 things and you don't get them, you enter a million competitions and you don't get anywhere. That means nothing. It just means that there's a lot of competitions and courses when there should be bigger literary departments, you know, dedicated to finding new talent. It's like stick to your guns, write what you want to write, how you want to write it. There is no true form.
Yeah.
Yeah, get used to having a second job, because you can't make a living out of it unless you write Hamilton. And also another thing I've been thinking about, because you know, a lot of stuff I've been doing in lockdown is writing more, or developing how I write more for TV and radio and film, and working on how you write film scripts, how you write TV scripts, and start doing that. Even if you're like, I love theatre, it's all I ever want to write is stage stuff. I think in the long term, it's quite good to know that there, you know, it's just, again, different formats of how you write a screenplay or a film script, and start on that as well quite early. Oh, and also gather around you a really solid crew of people that you work with and trust. Like, I'm looking at, there's like the amazing Sammy Wilborn is with us today, and Lily, like I said before, and it's all these amazing people out there that you meet and you know you're going to work with, and yourself, you know, and it's like, just get that tight crew around you that you want to make work with, and find other creatives that think like you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Debbie. Okay, so we're having a few questions coming now. We've got one question that I'll just read out. So, how has your earlier career affected your writing? You mentioned having to see intense images day in and day out, and some of your work is about very difficult subject matter. So that's the first question.
What? Just tell me the start of the question.
So it's I'll change it around. I think it makes sense. You mentioned having to see intense images day in and day out, and some of your work is about very difficult subject matter. How has your early career affected your writing?
I think because, like, working as a picture editor, like a bit more background. You know, I studied history of art. I love paintings. I love the art world. I love art and I just love it. I love looking at images and photography. So my plays are sort of rooted in there. Quite often I'll grow a scene out of an image. Is one of my sort of writing exercises.
Okay. That's interesting.
So yeah, I think in that sense, the work that, you know, I always talk about the previous life, but the work that I do never really leaves you. I always still think of myself as a picture editor or an art historian or whatever. So yeah, I think in that sense, the connection to the image and strong imagery drives how I write. And my writing is quite, you know, I like to paint. Oh God, sounds ridiculous. I like to paint pictures when I write. Do you know what I mean? I think that is the influence.
Thank you. Okay, another question, kind of related to that. What's your take on finding the balance with stories of trauma when writing from a heritage that's experienced so much? That's a great question. Yeah.
I think when it's if you feel you are, you know, that I had this with Mountain Warfare. It's like you are exposing so much of an inherited trauma, and that's the thing we don't talk about so much.
Yes.
And again, fabric is similar in that, you know, you writing about things that, like I said, you know, a lot of people have experienced. So it's that balance of being strong enough to do it and writing in a way that is able to take the material and focus on it as a writer, I guess, rather than it being an initial response. But then I do think it's really worthwhile if you have an experience, whether it's something really small or really something huge, that a way of processing can be to write, but then to take it later and turn it into a piece that you are happy to share and put out there for an audience. And also that sort of being politically active in that sense of, you know, I want to write some of these stories because I have there's a strong injustice at the root of it, as with fabric, or when I write about Armenia and the Armenian genocide. It's just bringing it to public knowledge and saying, here, look at it, engage with it, we must do something. And the more people that know, it feels like it could snowball. It could just trigger somebody going, not in the wrong way, but send somebody off to to read something and go, I had no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I do that. I watched something last night when I went, I had no idea about that. And you immediately go off to your friend Google and are like, what's going on here?
And I think the phrase you used, in like inherited trauma, like you feel an obligation to your ancestors to share this story because they've been through so much for you to even just be alive today. It's like, I feel this burden, but a privileged burden, that I need the world to hear this. I need you to understand that this happened. And I think a lot of people, our region is so, the Middle East, MENA region is so complex and so versatile. And we have so many of these situations happening now in the present day that I think the world just needs to wake up and just take it, listen and hear it through our art, because that's our weapon. That's all our weapon here. That's what we can use,
And this is, again, I'm looking at this is like, how many people, like 50 odd people watching this from, and a lot from the MENA region. And it's like, these are the people I want to learn from about this very complex, like I said, my mum was born and raised in Iraq, so you have a very small understanding of the intense complexity of these countries, rather than it just being, the Middle East, as a lot of Westerners think about it. And they don't, and quite often the takes we're given are very Western writers' views. And it's just like, what? It's like whenever a Twitter spat blows up about the Middle East, it's like half the people you're like, you ain't got a clue what you're talking about. And it's like, we have this huge wealth of talent who can give us those stories. But just to add on to that about the idea of trauma and inherited trauma, it's like, I also very much am going to write and are writing other things that draw on my Armenian heritage.
Yes.
And my British heritage that are not rooted in trauma, because we're not just that. We are not just that trauma. The food, I mean, the cookbook we'll be doing. But it is like, you've got to start somewhere and then go, there's that, but there's also, we're living, breathing.
Thank you. I think we have a question on Amina. If you want to unmute yourself, Amina, go for it.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I didn't know I was going to be called in. So my question was in terms of research. By the way, hi, Abi. Hi, Jessie. In terms of research, especially when you're writing on historical moments, how much do you invest in that? Because sometimes I find it difficult about this sharing and telling. So how much do you fictionalize, but how much do you take on to, in terms for inspiration? And just something to lead on for Jessie, if that's okay, with you, Abi, just in terms of performing, so for new actors and performers, when relating to like painful or important stories, how do you kind of perform that, but also kind of detach yourself from it as well? So these are my two questions. Thanks.
You go first, Abi.
Okay. Just ask me the question again. Sorry, so it's fresh in my head.
My Scouse accent's too quick. So the first question is, how much research do you invest in your plays around history, and what do you fictionalize, and what do you make up around that story?
Well, I guess I think it's a really good question, and a universal one as well. It's like you make the, depending on what you're writing. So if you're writing a verbatim piece, then that choice is made for you. You're drawing from the people that you're talking to. If you decide to, like to use the example of mountain warfare, is when I went to Yerevan, I just spent days in this huge historical archive and did as much research as I could in 48 hours. And because of there's that thing of history and distance and time, is the stories that I took from that to use in certain parts of the play they're fictionalized, but everything that I speak, that you'll know the scene I'm talking about, Jessie, at the very end when Ahavni's reciting the list. They're things that actually happened, but they're not attributed to anyone, just to this one character. And I guess it's that decision of, if you're going to do your research, don't just read the book that's in the one book that's online. Don't just read the research by the person that you think, oh well, I really like them, I trust them. You've got to go across the board. You've got to maybe delve into things that you wouldn't normally go near. You've got to get every opinion, I guess, every take on a historical event. And then I think it's the idea of what you're doing with the play or the piece that you're writing is the context. So wherever it's set, whatever story it's telling, that will influence how much you utilize of what you've learned through your research. Does that help?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't really just an open conversation, isn't it? So, but it's just really interesting to understand how research comes into play, but also when it comes from real stories, but ones that we attach ourselves to. So, but yeah, thanks, Abby.
I think just quickly to answer your question, Amina, great question. I think, you know, a lot of actors can relate to that. Like, how do you detach yourself from your work? I know when I got this play from Abby, it's the first time I've been able to play an Armenian character. So I felt the weight of that on me, you know, to just do my family justice and represent my heritage, and to also, you know, represent Abby, because she'd given me this honor of this character that I've always wanted. I've always wanted to play someone who's, you know, from where I am. So at first I was like so overwhelmed and I was like crying. And then I was like, hang on a minute, chill out. Like, you've got this role, you've been given this opportunity to represent your people, and secondly, to educate people about your people. So I kind of turned it, I know it sounds really weird and it's a really dark topic, and, you know, the genocide is such a heavy thing. And I know it's, you know, it's always in my life and my family's discussions. I kind of thought, how lucky am I to be able to be representing that community and sharing this story? So kind of when we had the rehearsals, I obviously was very engaged and very in it, as we say, and I was, you know, I felt the trauma of that, but I just had to remember the minute, you know, the camera stopped, to give myself a second to just breathe. I know it sounds weird, like I think a lot of actors talk about warming up, but we don't really talk about warming down, like cooling down. Like, I think it's so important to just take a few minutes and just shake off the energy of what you've done. Like, you know, if you've been to drum school, you know, semi-supine is like the go-to. You just sit and lie on the floor, relax, shake off the day, remember why you're telling that story. And for me, that turned into such a happy thing. And the fact that I could share that with my family, you know, my grandparents got to see it. I was like, you know, I couldn't ask for more. So it was, I think when you're doing darker topics and things that you connect to personally on an emotional level, remember why you're doing it and remember why it's important. And that will instantly give you a bit of gratitude. I know it sounds really weird and they're like two opposites, but I actually think they're really close. It's like love and hate, you know, the fine line. Is that helpful? Yeah, wicked. Okay, we've got a few questions in.
I just want to pop in because I always forget to look at the chat when we're on these talks. So if anyone's sending anything to me, I'm not ignoring you. I'm an idiot who never opens a chat box. So
I'm all over the chat. So if something comes in, I'll be sending it to Jessie. No worries.
Brilliant, thank you.
I'll just ask this one we had. I've also made work that addresses my own heritage and the painful things happening in my homeland. How do you balance the pride and power that comes with telling your story with the frustration that it can only go so far in addressing the issues at hand?
Well, you know, you're a creative. You know, what do? You make art to not make it so massive, but it is, you know, we're in the joyful position of our work is the thing that we love doing. So it's both, you know, it's kind of a privilege to do that. I balance it by, like, you know, like we talked earlier, I don't just write plays about being of Armenian heritage or the distant past and trauma of Armenia. And you know, you want to create a body of work that covers a lot of themes. So I think it's like if you just only wrote about that and it never, you know, you'd soon get called out for all they ever write about is that. And I do think beyond that, you know, it's that idea of if one person comes to see a play and goes away and looks into it a little bit more and becomes more interested in taking more activist role in, you know, simple things like you might find that there's a petition to bring a bill in Parliament to recognise the Armenian genocide. This is something that's happening at the moment, you know. You might find that there's during, I don't know if you're aware of what happened last year in the Artsakh region with the war with Azerbaijan, but there were a lot of grassroots collectives that put together, you know, there was the what was
that? And, you know, groups and
yeah, and charities. So if you wanted to help, there was funds that you could donate to. There was shoebox collections that you could do. You know, it's just how you can only ever make work and hope that one person in each performance goes away and thinks, I might just look into that a little bit more.
I guess it's like remembering why you're doing it, isn't it? Trying to connect.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's realizing that you don't, you know, you're completely allowed to not have to take on that mantle as well. If you just want to write purely creatively and tell whatever stories, that's as valid as well.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's each individual what they need, you know, hope to get from their work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I think we're going to go to Lana next. I think she has a question.
Hi, Abby. Hi, Jessie.
Hello.
So this is kind of a weird curiosity, but I'm always curious how theaters or artistic directors or literary managers say no to a proposed pitch or play. How honest, how extensive are they in their response to you when they don't choose to choose your project or your play? Because I've heard a range of reactions, and so I'm always curious to see, you know, do they just give you like a generic response of it just doesn't fit, or do they give you, you know, truth?
So I'm gonna be honest with you here. I think when it's a commission, and I've been very, very fortunate in that each commission I've had has gone to production, apart from one. Which was just a funding thing. So that's sort of still on the back burner. In terms of spec plays where you just send them in, the one that I'm working on at the moment, it's, to be honest with you, it's just been silence. You don't hear anything. And that's the way I've found, and I'm sure others will have other opinions, but you know, that pile of spec scripts on ADs and literary departments' desks is huge, and if you're not on the top of it, or you're not part of, you know, a commissioned body of writers for the larger places, then you won't. I don't think you will hear anything, and it is because, you know, that there's very small departments for a very large amount of stuff coming in. There's a lot of creatives out there. I know that other people will have different responses to that, so I wouldn't take what I say as that's across the board. That's just been my experience, which is probably not terribly helpful, but
No,
it's you know, it's a resounding silence usually when you're like, here's my magnum opus. I have put my entire soul and being into this play. Please read it, and it's like tumbleweed. So, you know, then you start doing other things like, right, I'm going to get a reading together. You're going to invite all those people, and suddenly they're like, yeah, come along. And it's like, right, now you get to hear it. And so there's different ways of getting a production on, but there's lots of rejections. There's lots of different ways of getting rejections. I think one good thing is a lot of the competitions that are out there. Sometimes if you make it beyond the sort of first read, like the first 10 pages, then I know Papa Tango are really good at giving feedback on nearly every entry, and I think, you know, the bigger ones, if you get to a certain level, you will get feedback, quite comprehensive feedback, and the smaller places like Pint Size, they give feedback on everything. I think, you know, it may not be huge, but you know, a lot more of the smaller companies are more, you know, they will respond quicker and they will give you advice.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. We are going to Laura next.
Hi, I've got a question. I wondered what your thoughts are on group terms like MENA, for example, or MENA Plus? Or, I mean, are there more pros and cons? And I'm sort of asking because we, you know, Jessie and you talked a little bit about being Armenian and then falling under or being platformed by an organisation like ours called MENA Plus or Arab British Centre, and like, there's a lot of conversation about whether or not there's a strength in community, but there's dangers in collectivism and generalisation or any sort of catch-all terms. But at the same time, sometimes it's got to be a halfway house that enables you to be counted at least in some way, you know, if there's a box that represents something. I just wondered what your thoughts are on that.
I mean, you know, when MENA started, I was like, yes, I feel more at home there because I feel seen in some degree. I feel, you know, like you look at the directory and it's like, oh, there's another Armenian, or there's an Iranian, or there's someone from Iraq. It's just, it's lovely because even though we are, you know, we're a specific little region on our own, the Caucasus, it's still it's closer than just being lumped in with of just other, like I said, the tick box of other. It's, you know, and it's a work in progress. It's just great to be part of a community that is like, yeah, you're part of us. We are included, but within that, there's work to be done. So, you know, it can only be a good thing. Is that a bit of a Disney answer?
Yeah, no, that's sort of, I agree in a lot of ways. I think you know, there's a big chasm between where we are now and then the creation of perhaps different ways of considering all of these things, and you've got to find steps that take you there, and this is a step. So
yeah. I mean, I think it's wonderful. It's really lovely to be invited by the British Arab Centre. It's like, I feel, like I say, I feel at home. You know, particularly as like, even though, you know, my mother's Armenian, but as we know or, you know, Jessie will know this, the diaspora is huge. We're everywhere. We're just very rarely from Armenia. You know,
there's more Armenians in the diaspora than there is in Armenia.
Yeah, and of course, you know, the route that brought us all here is fleeing this terrible event in 1915. So, you know, my grandfather was lived in Iran, eloped to Iraq. That's where my mum was born and raised. So, you know, I feel an affinity with the you know, the more traditional idea of the Middle East, and have an understanding of it, as does my mother and my brother. You know, it's the idea of you can't what's that? Is it pigeonhole? You can't just say, oh well, you. And again, when you look at the MENA directory, it's like, it's just brilliant. You see, it's not just one place.
Yeah,
we're drawn from all sorts of strands, and it's like, yeah, that's what you want to recognize.
That's what I've always said. I've always felt it's the culture that connects us. You know,
yeah.
We've had discussions about olives in our steering group meetings because it's just like, and we all know what it means. It just makes sense. Like no other region in the world will understand that, but we do. But yeah, okay. Final question. We're going to go to Shireen.
Hi, Abi. This has been absolutely brilliant. I'm just so inspired. I'd like to ask you, how do you, when you have an idea, so you said it's from a vision or a visual image, how do you know if that's a play or a script or a book, and how much of that decision is creative instinct, and how much of it, if it's not too personal question, is driven by finances?
Oh, yeah. So I think we've all got, I'm willing to bet all of the creatives here we've got notebooks and drawers full of brilliant ideas that were like, woke up at 4 a.m. and went, oh my God, and wrote it down. And we're like, oh my God, that's like a Hollywood blockbuster. And then you're like, you wake up the next day and you're like, how do I get that to that? And then you calm down and you go, okay, what is it? My first instinct is always, is it a play? Because I started writing plays first, and I'm getting better now after over 10 years of doing this, at going, no, you know what, be brave, that's a 6-part TV series, or that is going to be a film script. The the only advice I can give on that, and what I do, is I sit with the idea. If I have an idea in that, I mean, there's, you know, there's a couple of things that I've got, like, are spec ideas. And one is a film, one is a TV series, and there's like 3 plays that I want to write. Now, nobody's paying me to do any of those, so you have to balance that with still hustling for the paid work. And again, that's a long 10-year process of you need to have a side thing as well to bring them. I'm sure loads of us do this. But to go back to your original thing of how do you know, you don't. You just got to sit with it. You've got to play. You know, if it's not a commission thing, then you've got one thing you've got is time to play with that idea and go, right, I will try it. Does it feel like a play? What am I saying with it? What do I want to do with it? Do I see it in like vivid? Do I see the trailer for the film? Or do I see it as this thing that is just going to pull at people's hearts and make them go, oh my God, you know, just mess around with it. You've got the time, mess around with that idea, but don't be scared of going, you know what, it's not a one-woman monologue for Edinburgh Festival. It is actually a Netflix series. And not be scared of that, you know, going from a 70-minute monologue to, you know, 12 episodes, sort of 50-minute each thing. You can do it. You know, if that idea isn't strong in you, it's just I think being brave enough to go, it's not what I normally do, but maybe it needs to be. Maybe the why the idea came to me is for that reason, to explore your take you in a different direction as a writer or creative or maker. Is that useful?
Yeah, that's brilliant. Because I find that plays, because you said that TV, you're like, come on, be brave, do TV. Yeah. For me, when I think of a story, it just seems like a TV series. And I think, God, plays, you're telling somebody, I'm going to impress you and say 1 hour, I've got this concept. And that terrifies me. So it's interesting to hear that you think that TV is more like, come on, be brave.
Yeah, actually, it's where you. I mean, like I say, I always started writing. You know, the first thing I wrote was a play, and I will always love theatre. I will always love. The thing I love and I miss the most right now is just feeling like whether you're doing it outdoors, immersive, there's a whole bunch of people there that just settle at that point, and then the play starts, and when you feel them lean into it, it's like it's live. It's really physical. Febrile experience, and that will always be my first love. But I have ideas that you can't, I'm not, maybe one day the National will give me a whole year to do what would be a TV series but run it in a theatre. That's not going to happen anytime soon, so I want to explore those things that feel more episodic or feel more visual. So it's like, right, I want to go where I can do that in a film script. But the world is literally your oyster, and one thing we all have right now is time. So whatever that brilliant idea is that you're thinking of, get it out, look at it, and go, yeah, Netflix, here I come.
Thanks, Abby. Brilliant place to just end that fantastic conversation on. But one very quick Abby fire question from us. So if you were hosting your own hangout, what would be the one creative you would bring on?
You see, I'm going to do what I always do, which is like, I don't just want to bring on one.
Okay.
So I'd love
3.
No, it's like I'm just looking at all these people here that I've never met before, but I'm like, I just want to talk to you. I want to do more of this. But I think, if I'm going to be more traditional and do what I'm told, which is a rare thing, is there's the lovely Hannah Khalil, who I feel like I know really well. I've never met. I know she lives up the road from me, but she's brilliant, and she's an Irish Palestinian writer. And I know some of you are familiar with her work. It's like, I'd love to get her on here and have a chat with her. Yeah,
I'm sure we're going to be reaching out to her next. Shame we can't reach out to Cher though, hey?
Oh my God, I should have said. Sorry, Cher is our Armenian.
Abi, thank you so much. This has been brilliant. It's been so great, obviously, as always, talking to you. I feel like a lot of people got a lot out of it. So thank you so much for doing this. We really, like, on behalf of MENA Arts, we really, really appreciate it. So thank you. Little clap for Abi. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll pass back over to Laura now while she gives us our closing things. Thank you so much, everyone.